How's the royal family? I pray that everyone is doing well. Well, my royal family, before we get started, I just got an email ago from our queen, Brenda Hill. Her husband has passed today, and I let her know that I would let the royal family know. Keep Brenda Hill's family in prayer. Again, her dear husband has passed away, and we do what we do. We are a family here, and there, when somebody passes or we have a birth, whatever it is, we always support each other. So my Queen Brenda Hill, my heart goes out to you and your individual royal family. Please take care of yourself, Queen, because you're no good to no one if you don't take care of yourself. And we're here for you. And I also let her know if her family set up some type of GoFund or something like that, that I would put the link out, because we know that these people don't care if we pass. It's all about money with them. So be amazed what $1 or $2 or $5 will do. So I just let her know that too as well. And again, Brenda Hill's husband has passed, and she needs our support. So my royal family, y'all see the title there. And with this coronavirus, it has revealed many things. And sometimes I will joke around with y'all, and I call the coronavirus the vapors. And the reason why, because when you vape, it makes sure it gets every orifice, and that's what's going on. This coronavirus has hit every orifice on the planet, and it has revealed America's weaknesses, a lot of weaknesses, that this country has nothing more that has been propped up to look like this is the land of milk and honey. And what is being revealed, these countries that Donald Trump deemed shitholes, they have had to deal with so much adversity that they're not reaching out for help. They're helping themselves. But look at how this country gets down. Oh yeah, I have a journey to take the royal family on when they're saying there is a shortage of meat. You're going to be surprised what I have found, what they deem being a shortage, because I'm a literal person. When you say something is a shortage, that is a lack thereof. So let's go on this journey. So I have an article that I'm going to read first to the royal family to lay it all out. So let's get this here. Let's get this going. All right. Okay. So, President Trump signed an executive order on Tuesday invoking the Defense Production Act to keep meat processing plants open. A senior White House official told CBS News plants owned by some of the country's largest food companies have struggled with outbreaks of coronavirus among the workers and a growing death toll. The executive order also applies to plants that have already closed, which will have to reopen with healthy workers. The executive order declares meat processing plants critical infrastructure to protect also disproportions to the meat supply. A person familiar with the matter said earlier Tuesday, the federal government will also provide workers with additional protective gear and guidance, the person said. The person said. They usually give up a name. Okay, let's get up here a little taste. A senior White House official said the Trump administration will also issue guidance for the Labor Department, providing additional liability protections. The White House and the Labor Secretary Eugene Silica are also working to provide safety standards and guidance for employees. On Sunday, the Center of Disease Control and Occupation Health Administration issued interim guidance for meat and poultry processing workplaces, noting the meat and the poultry processing workers must often work close to each other over 10 to 12-hour periods. The government suggested changes to the process line so the workers are at least 6 feet apart in all directions, side to side, and when facing each other. When possible, among other measures, the guidance also suggests realigning workstations so the workers aren't facing each other, and also putting up signs to remind workers to remain apart during work and practice social distancing during their breaks. Mr. Trump reports during an event with small business owners who have benefited from the Paycheck Protection Program, the order is being drawn up and he intends to sign it Tuesday. The order from Mr. Trump is intended to strive off a decision from food companies to temporarily close the majority of their processing plants, which could reduce the country's processing capacity by up to 80%, the senior White House official said. During a meeting in the Oval Office with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, Mr. Trump told reporters he planned to sign an executive order Tuesday to address liability problems in the food supply and said there's plenty supply. The order from the president is required meat processing plants to continue operating comes as several of the nation's largest meat producers have had to temporarily close facilities after employees tested positive for COVID-19, the disease caused by the novel coronavirus. Tyson Food had to shutter its pork processing plants in Waterloo, Iowa, while Smithfield Foods closed its pork plant in South Dakota, temporarily shut it down. Meat packing plants in Green Bay, Wisconsin on Sunday after 189 positive coronavirus cases were tracked back to the facility. Oof. On Monday, John H. Tyson, chairman for Tyson Foods, warned in a full-page newspaper advertisement the food supply chain is breaking. The United Food and Commercial Workers International Union, a labor union representing more than 1.3 workers, said Tuesday that at least 5,000 meatpacking and 1,500 food processing workers have been impacted by coronavirus, either having tested positive, missed work to self-quarantine, were waiting for the results, or was hospitalized. 20 employees in the meatpacking food process have died, United Food and Commercial Workers said, and 22 meatpacking plants have temporarily shut down. On Sunday, Senator Mike Rounds, a Republican from South Dakota, urged Vice President Mike Pence to take action to address the country's food production crisis. On Monday, asked Mr. Trump to use the Defense Production Act to bolster production at plants. Republican Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa praised Mr. Trump's forthcoming executive order, tweeting that the meat processing plant are a critical infrastructure for the country's food supply. Mr. Trump said in March he was preparing to use the Defense Production Act to compel private companies to bolster production of key medical supplies early in the coronavirus epidemic. He had used his authority under the Korean War era law a handful of times, including to push 3M and other medical device companies to manufacture masks and ventilators, and GM to produce ventilators earlier this month. Mr. Trump said he is prepared to invoke the Defense Production Act to compel unnamed company to booster production of swabs needed for coronavirus. All right, my royal family, let's get into this first video.
As workers get sick, that prompted Tyson Foods to warn, quote, "The food supply chain is breaking." Gerald Mand is a former undersecretary for food safety and currently teaches at Tufts. Sir, it's good to have you with us tonight. Are we on the cusp of another crisis here in terms of food supply?
Well, thank you, Scott. And I think that we need to take precautions, and there's steps we need to be taking that we haven't taken. And particularly the Department of Agriculture and its Food Safety Inspection Service, which I help lead, needs to do more. It's in a particularly strong position in that it has an inspector in every plant, but so far it hasn't used that resource to protect the safety of workers at the plant or even their own inspectors.
We've got a couple of issues on our hands here. We have millions of pounds of food that is being taken out of the supply while these plants are closed. And then even when they reopen, we need to make sure we're taking care of our workers. How can we better do that?
Well, that's a great point. You know, people hear that there's plenty of food, and there is. If you look at food from the farm to people's dining room tables, we have the food on the farm. But what's been clear from the beginning is the risk we face is the workers who bring the food from the farm to the processing and to our homes. And as more people become sick, they're at risk. And so we need to make it a high priority to protect them. The Department of Agriculture hasn't done that so far. It was in a unique position because it had inspectors in every plant, and it could have been taking steps to work with CDC, to work with OSHA, to put in place guidance that these plants were taking to protect their workers. That hadn't been done soon enough, and so now we have the current problem. But steps need to be taken now.
You worried about the food supply chain yourself, whether it relates to pork, beef, or poultry?
Well, I think there are going to be disruptions. We've already seen those. I've seen them in the grocery stores near where I am, outside Washington, D.C. The meat supply is not as stable as it was. Things are there and not there. But I think we can take steps now to make sure that things get better, not worse.
The longer the plants stay closed, how quickly do you start to have more severe disruptions in the supply chain?
Yeah, I think you're already starting to see some of that. A good number of plants are closed. We've read stories about growers, producers of animals having to kill those animals without putting them into slaughter. And I think those are starting to be seen at stores. But so far, and hopefully we can keep it at a point where you're just not going to have your choice of the same cuts that you usually look for, but you'll see a supply. But it does require joint urgent action, not just by CDC working with OSHA or FDA, who each separately put out guidance today, but those agencies with USDA's Food Safety and Inspection Service should be working together as one team, and they're not.
Yeah, the other tragedy here is food waste. That's what the Tyson chairman mentions today. Here we have people who are going hungry in our country, who are waiting in their cars for hours in lines at makeshift food banks, and yet we have food waste because it can't be processed because of this crisis that seems to be developing.
Absolutely, and it's another area where the Department of Agriculture could play such an important role because we're taking from the farm. They have people that are there in every state, working with the farm in every community, as well as people in places like meatpacking plants. But you're right, it's heartbreaking to see the amount of food being plowed under. I saw in a facility near us in Delaware, or a farm, more than 2 million chickens were having to be killed and not put into slaughter. And yet you're exactly right. People don't have enough food. In order to solve that, it's not something that one governor can do or one community can do. We need a strong national strategy, and we haven't had that.
Quickly, should we be worried about prices going up as a result of these shortages?
Well, I hope not. As I said, there's plenty of food out there, but as things become in short supply, there's the opportunity for people to charge more.
All right, my royal family. So as we can see, let me take this down. As we can see, is that basically what they are saying is because a lot of these plants have had to literally shut down, that the food supply is just basically sitting on the farms. There's abundance of chickens and cows and pigs. And, these folks, they feel like that's a necessity to have meat. Me personally, it's not a necessity. I'm not a vegetarian, but I don't eat red meat, but I do eat chicken and turkey. And it's not like I would lose my mind if I couldn't eat chicken or turkey. I adapt real well, and I have even said since this coronavirus epidemic, it has really inspired me to eat better, to up my nutrition level on and everything, and to keep my immune system up and stuff. So, you have to watch these people with wordplay when they say a shortage. What do you really mean by a shortage? So I don't want to spoil it for y'all, but I'm going to play this next short video. And you see here where the meat plant workers to Trump, employees aren't going to show up. They's like, fuck that. People scared. They're demanding for people to come to work. A lot of these places are basically saying they're not supplying nothing. You shit out of luck and you have to provide your own stuff. And it boggles my mind because a lot of y'all know I have a construction background, so it wasn't unusual for us to, we had everything in abundance: Tyvek suits, masks, gloves, rain boots. We did have to provide our own work clothes and our own construction boots, but those other things, they were there in abundance, and they wouldn't lose their mind if you went through 5 or 6 Tyvek suits a day. They didn't trip off of it. Or whatever, you run through the boxes of masks or anything, nobody tripped. And then we had variations of masks. We had the ones that we see everybody with them on, and then we had the ones with the canisters when you really dealing with some really major toxic stuff. And what boggles my mind about all that when it comes to that is when these things are supplied to the people that are working for you, those supplies, and they're using it in abundance, and you're buying it in abundance, is nothing more than a tax write-off. So I'm just like scratching my head, like, really? Because this is foreign to me. The way it's coming at me and my husband with our background, we're like, we never had issues with supplies. Just go get what you got to go get and keep it moving. So anyway, I fully support these folks because, you heard 20 people so far have died in those plants of coronavirus.
The CDC is urging meat processing plants to change the way they do business in an effort to both protect the workers and the consumers, and also to try to keep more of these plants open. New guidelines suggest that plant owners need to add physical barriers between workers, stagger in and out times, and create overnight shifts. This comes as 3 major plants in South Dakota, Minnesota, and Iowa have been forced closed. Together, they make up roughly 15% of the U.S. pork production. Let's bring in CNN's Diane Gallagher to talk more about this. Diane, the chair of Tyson Foods just warned that the food supply chain is breaking. Industry experts say that it's vulnerable, but not yet in crisis. What might all this mean for when we go to the grocery store or order Instacart?
Yeah, it's going to mean that there's less variety, Jake. It's going to mean that potentially the exact type of meat, the cut, if you want pork or beef or chicken, if you want it to be chicken wings or a nice pork chop or something like that, you might not find exactly that. It also means that we're going to see less of a variety in some of these brands as their plants shut down. You mentioned those 3 pork production plants. That only represents about half of the pork production that's offline right now. Smaller plants, other plants are closing briefly. We're looking at between 25 and 30% of pork production offline right now, about 10% of beef production offline. And when that's the case, the farmers don't have anywhere to send their livestock. So we are seeing blips in the food chain, but it's not at a crisis level, at least when you're going to the grocery store right now.
Well, yeah, let me focus on the farmers there and on that end of the chain here. If these plants are closing, does that mean that farmers have fewer places to sell their livestock, and then their businesses will be in trouble?
It does. And right now, Jake, if there is a crisis involving with our food chain, it's with the farmers. They don't have anywhere to send their livestock right now. The Minnesota Pork Producers Association said at this point there's about 1 million hogs in the United States that just have nowhere to go. In fact, the board there said that they're looking at potentially having to euthanize 200,000 hogs in just Minnesota alone if they can't find somewhere to take them. In Iowa, the governor and the U.S. senators sent a letter to the USDA asking for help from the federal government, help with getting these plants reopened and running again safely. And also, Jake, important here, mental health assistance. Farmers have a very high suicide rate as an industry anyway, and they've said that this financially is becoming even more difficult for them and they need help.
All right, my royal family. Let me shut that one down before I get into the last one. You know what I was thinking was that how you can see how the enemy does not want to be inconvenienced at all. They have been very, very pushy and forceful and, trying to rush and change the narrative back in the direction that they want. But we see the coronavirus. She do what she gonna do, all right? And they want their world to remain the same. See, this stuff goes so deep that they want this to go on to an infamy as far as how they subjugate us, ridicule us, kill us, or how whatever they do to us. They want to keep everything in place. And the main thing that I would be worried about is living, keeping my immune system up. I ain't worried about if they have little meat. That ain't necessary. I would be more concerned about plants and lentils and other things that we can eat. And we should even have less meat in our diet and have a diet towards plants because of the way that the royal family is made up. This farmer's diet is literally killing us. It's not even good for our melon. See, we're made up different from these people. We are selenium based. They are sulfur based. And they literally, because of their structure and how they're made up, they crave meat more than the norm. It's not even unusual to see them eat meat raw. If you ever heard of steak tartare, things like that. And so it's just this coronavirus, like I said, has touched every orifice on the earth. And now things are backing up and they consider that a shortage when things are backing up. Pay attention to the language. Amazing.
The president has had very little to say about this executive order other than to say that he wants to deal with liabilities in the industry, which leads to an important question. Is this an order that's geared to protect the nation's food supply or to connect these companies? That is, to keep their companies safe from their own workers. This is what a potential meat shortage looks like. Too many hogs in Minnesota. Too many cattle in Indiana, and way too many chickens everywhere.
You need to empty those barns.
So how can too many animals cause a food shortage? The answer is simple. There are not enough workers to butcher them.
We just won't have enough space to house all the animals that we have.
In Minnesota, farmer Mike Patterson said, with pig pens overflowing and few places to take his herd, euthanasia has been a terrible option.
Pretty tough for me to even think about.
Gary Harris, who's worked at the now closed Tyson plant in Logansport, Indiana for 2 decades, says companies should take the blame for reacting too slowly and turning his workplace into a virus breeding ground.
I've heard supervisors say that it's just a virus like the flu.
According to the union representing workers, at least 22 plants have closed because of the virus in the last 2 months, and at least 20 meatpacking and food processing workers have died.
I'm scared.
For workers like Ernest Latiker at a Tyson plant in Iowa, it could soon get even worse.
We're working with Tyson. We are. We're going to sign an executive order today, I believe, and that'll solve any liability problems where they had certain liability problems, and we'll be in very good shape.
The liability problems the president's talking about involves the meatpacking industry's concerns about getting sued by workers who get sick while processing the food. The president's executive order uses the Defense Production Act to classify meat production as critical infrastructure to order the facilities to stay open. Details have not been released, but a senior White House official told the Washington Post the Labor Department will work with companies to provide enhanced safety for workers, and in exchange, the president's order will protect companies from being sued by its workers. Today, America's largest union representing meatpackers issued a statement which says in part, "We urge the administration to immediately enact clear and enforceable safety standards that compel all meatpacking companies to provide the highest level of protective equipment through access to the federal stockpile of PPE. Ensure daily testing is available for workers and their communities. Enforce physical distancing at all plants, and provide full paid sick leave for any workers who are infected." Ernest Latiker said he went to the company's HR department last week to tell them he was scared.
They told me I was safe, and they told me that everything was okay, and they told me I'll have a better chance of catching the coronavirus going out to Walmart than in Tyson. Come to work, you safe.
So did he believe them?
I wanted to believe them, and then I needed that money at the same time, so I went to work.
On CNN earlier this week, Tyson Foods president Dean Banks said the company is committed to the safety of its workers.
And we're part of that community. And from everything we've seen, the spread of the disease in the community is affecting us in the plant.
Here is another concern. If local health officials decide a plant is not safe to work in and shut the plant down, will they be allowed to continue to shut it down, or will this executive order take precedence?
So, my royal family, let's get back over here. What I was thinking was also because, not just because of the this situation, but other jobs where there is masses of people and they're demanding for them to literally go to work, with not having what they properly need. They actually have the power. Realize you have the power. They need you to go to work. And for them to be flippant and say, well, you got to provide your own stuff, and making it like, well, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, then we'll get some more people. Well, they're going to keep running into the same problem. So I just pray that these people will continue to unite and hold out and demand for them to do what they necessarily need to do. And all that gobbledygook that they talking about, they going to provide this and that. That sounds good. But I'm going to keep a close eye, because trust and believe, if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, them folks going to walk. People are scared, like that brother said. Now, me personally, I wouldn't have went back to work, because you're not going to just blase and tell me something. Oh, and then when you get there, you're doing a little something flimsy and we working on it. No, you're just saying whatever you got to say to get these folks back up in here. And we give our power away. We give our power away when they can make certain demands of you. No, you make demands of them. And it's happening, because those guys and those men and women, they like, we're not coming back. Oh no, we're not coming back. Y'all gonna have to really get your shit together. So that speaks volumes. What's going on in the internals? Y'all say these little feel good pieces up and we're going to dissect it. You put feel-good articles, we're going to dissect it, and all of that. Look at that disgusting shit that's going on with Amazon. You don't want to provide anything to them. But see, what is also being revealed, who are the essential workers? Overall, it's the royal family out there on the front line. So when you hearing black folks dying of this stuff, 9 times out of 10, it was somebody working on the front line in this war. Yeah, coronavirus is a war as far as how Esau look at it. In Moab, Esau coming for your ass because you have affected America. You have affected their bottom line, and they'll come after their own mama. They don't give a damn. They truly don't. So we see what they deem as a unquote meat shortage, to the point of you seeing them dumping produce out in the deserts to let it rot. They will see this stuff is not new to me. My grandfather, he used to drive trucks for Tree Sweet, and his job was to dump oranges in the desert in Arizona. And when he couldn't take it no more, he went to the hood and dumped them in the hood. Somebody told on him, and he lost his job. Because it's like, wait a minute, these people, they can use these oranges just to keep the price up. Then they'll throw away tons of meat and dump them in the ocean just to keep up the price of meat. See, that's what their concern is. They can get all this shit cut up and sent into the stores, and because of its abundance, it's a great deal of meat. So they like, they want to keep it on starvation mode, and they just sitting there, the animals sitting there waiting to be slaughtered. And then the dude got the nerve to say, euthanasia? You're killing them anyway, so what the hell are you talking about? All these people is twisted. So the question that I ask our royal family, do we or don't we have a meat shortage? Anyway, my royal family, render your voice with your beautiful divine words. And it's always, my royal family, I thank you for your love. I thank you for your support. And with that said, Ashe.